All right, guys. In this video, I wanted to go over like sort of a case study as far as what rehab looked like for my client Joey, because basically he got a back injury about a couple months ago, and we had to make some pretty decent changes to his programming as well as sort of like explain changes we also made to his technique as well as like a routine that we also did routinely throughout the rehab process to sort of desensitize his tissue. So prior to Joey getting injured, this was how his programming was laid out. And towards the end of the block, he would notice that he was really getting a lot more back pain, and that was starting to really interfere with his performance, particularly on his week fours with his heavier squats. Now, a part of that was just kind of realizing that, Joey has a tendency to push a little bit hard, and unfortunately, kind of ending off several blocks in a row at like RPE 10 on squats that bled over into his deadlift where he was massively underperforming due to back fatigue. And then if you look on this sixth block, kind of went into that first one, and the squat like felt decent, but couldn't even move his deadlift. And he was complaining about his back, and I made a slight change to his program to maybe have like a little bit more like a rest from his heavy squat, putting in secondary squat, but it was still pretty painful to the point where he's telling me that I am in so much pain that this hurts. But it was very specifically on deadlift, but squats he was more or less okay. Now it was still like impacting his strength though to some extent, because it was very uncomfortable. He started to progress with this layout. So what we did for the first rehab block is we basically took some time off of really pushing the compound lifts as hard. I would also move around his training split to where he was doing light hinging within more so like this was like not really a true like RPE as far as like regular procedure exertion. This is more like a pain cap. So like basically what happens when you're in pain is your nervous system is sending signals to your body that you need to back off. And there's two models of pain. There is the biomedical model, which is basically says that if you are in pain, there has to be some sort of physical deformity present. You must be actually injured. Like if you get like an MRI of your back, there must be a disc herniation. But we kind of realized that pain is a little more complicated than that. And it's more so a biopsychosocial model, which basically says our thoughts, feelings, beliefs, environment impact our perception of pain. So a good example of this is like, say if you are not hungry normally, but you go to a party and there's pizza and it smells really good and all your friends are eating the pizza, then you decide that you're a little bit hungry and you have pizza or dessert is brought out and you're like, oh, I have that dessert stomach. That's going to impact your hunger, as well as with like pain. If you have a belief system where like you had an uncle that had like a bad back, and he never moved, and he was always like, oh, I just have a bad back. Like you might be scared of movement. That's going to impact your perception of pain. But basically, unless there is like an actual contraindication that there's something deeper going on, like you're having some sort of neurological impairment, it's really debilitating in everyday life. Like you can't do anything. Usually, you don't need to go out and seek further medical attention to see if there is something actually wrong. If there is something wrong, like an actual muscle strain, herniated disc like that will change management. And actually, Joey did get an MRI done, and he did have a herniated disc. But basically, we're like, okay, cool. So Joey still has a goal of training and getting stronger at powerlifting. We need to back off and allow for basically his nervous system to stop freaking out and stop sending these high pain signals. And that's why I put a pain cap of like 3 to 4 out of 10 on his main lifts. And whatever that weight was, he stopped there. And basically the whole goal is to sort of desensitize your nervous system to interpreting that signal as painful, or that stimulus as painful, and progressing towards training pain-free. So you can kind of see here, we stopped deadlifting. We did some light hinging with ascending sets. I really like ascending sets in a rehab scenario because it allows you to sort of desensitize the tissue and not really go above like what a tolerable symptoms are, as opposed to if you're just hopping to a top set. So we did lighter weights, we did some higher reps, and we started to just do a little bit more bodybuilding work. And we switched the goal from strength to building muscle, getting and improving body composition, as well as getting out of pain. And towards the end of the block, he was having less pain, or in his symptoms were staying static as he was able to increase load, which is actually really good sign. Now, the pain was getting worse. You might have had to have more of an intervention, but really, when I am going throughout the rehab process, I want to see pain not getting worse as we're loading weight on the bar, not going above that pain cap, and over time, the symptoms should start to regress. And you can kind of see like here, like he did less weight on 1 week. Again, like he had a little bit more pain. There will be ups and downs throughout the rehab process. It's really frustrating, but like you have to stay consistent. And towards the end of this, like he actually hit like, some pretty decent weight, but he was also very patient, and he proclaimed that he didn't really have any sort of pain. And so you can kind of see like this is what the layout looked like compared to what he was doing before. So really quite a bit of programming changes that we made, and that goes into this block where Joey is actually getting much stronger. He said he feels basically no pain while he is lifting. We did make some changes to basically do sumo deadlifting instead of conventional deadlifting, because if you look at how Joey is sort of built, he's very not a lot of pain, a lot of stress on his lower back. Compared to some people that might be a little bit more well leveraged, and really it was just like this position where basically having that more flexible spine position was putting a lot of stress and compression on his lower back. So what we decided to do is go to a sumo deadlift, because this can usually put a little bit less stress on that area that has been irritated. And we went over to sumo, and he was able to do some pretty decent loading here with no pain. You kind of see how he's able to get into a much more efficient position more naturally, with less of that lumbar flexion, which is what I wanted to see. He's able to like load his legs more. So much better, a little bit more extension in his spine as opposed to here. You look how he's just really flexed over. A lot of how it turns like a stiff leg deadlift, like regardless of the cueing that we would sort of give him, and that's going to put a lot of stress on your lower back. Whereas this, he's actually able to use his legs with his back. So that's sort of the changes that we made to his squat. And then one thing that I really wanted him to focus on with squatting was how he's bracing, with basically breathing down on his breathing out and down on his belts to sort of create some spinal the proper stacking of your ribs over your pelvis, and then really focusing on driving the knees forward and being like less hingy. You kind of see here, there still needs to be a little bit of work. He's still a little bit hyperextended in his lower back, and that's probably causing a little bit of pain, as well as improving his center of mass management. But he's able to squat without pain, where he wasn't able to do that before. So clearly, Joey can grind like hell. That's another thing that we're going to work on. He was a little bit like detrained, right? Like coming out of the rehab block, and that's normal. But like Joey can also grind very well. Like that's very much like we know from experience. RPE 8 to 9 for him. But one thing that we're also going to do is we just notice, hey, his symptoms really started to get high once he's pushing towards the RPE 9, 10. So we're capping his blocks in RPE 8 on squat and on deadlift. These are 5, 6. Sometimes I make mistakes, but like basically we're just capping his deadlift a little bit lighter because he's had a little bit more pain with that. And we're also doing a shorter block length, because sometimes it's like the frequency of exposure at a certain higher intensity can exacerbate pain. So we switched to like a 3-week block length, capping things at a lower relative exertion to help manage his pain symptoms, and really just slowly progressing load. So for example, he just said he didn't have any pain here, RPE 5. So the typical adaptation rates I will see from people is anywhere between 3 to 5%. So I'm going to give them a range of 105 to 110 here, 112 to 117.5. And then we will probably have something similar with 115 to 122.5, depending on how he's feeling. But I think also really like slowly increasing the load and not going to too high intensity after you've had an acute injury is important. But the good news is that like with most of these injuries that you can kind of see, he started to stabilize with the symptoms about 2-ish weeks after we really started to manage things. And that is actually typically like the actual turnaround time I see for most people with gym injuries, is that they're usually short term. They're nothing to be, freak out about. The main thing is keep moving. Do things that are going to desensitize your tissues to interpreting that stimulus as painful. And then what I'm going to show you guys, I need to airdrop this, but this is something that my friend Brendan, who's a doctor of physical therapy, sent me over as far as like what people should do throughout the day to sort of desensitize your tissues to pain, because really you want to have as much pain-free movement or low pain movement as possible to reduce down our body's nervous system sending out an impulse that, hey, this is really painful, we need to stop. So I instructed Joey as well to do this 3 times per day. This is also what he does prior to all the squatting and deadlifting sessions right now, just as a good warm-up session. But this just helps get people out of pain. More movement is better. Get your steps into. I instructed Joey to keep moving, getting his 8,000 10,000 steps in per day and whatnot. But yeah, he's on his way progressing towards pain-free. And these programming changes are going to probably be the most helpful thing as far as managing symptoms. You can do prehab and rehab exercises that will help out a lot, but you have to basically change programming and change what you are doing. And we have something relatively different than what we started off with, right? Where we look at how much rest he has, the frequency, the intensity of movement, and the reality is that now we're going back to twice a week frequency on squats, and phasing in it's a little bit more of a hack squats that are less axially fatiguing, as well as pause squat that's similar in loading range to what he's going to be hitting on his primary day. Just really help him get more used to these weights. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. We were well on our way to pain-free loading. He was also able to do some hinging, which has been awesome to see. And really key on your hinges is don't go down further than what your hips and hamstrings go back. I told him probably have his knees be a little bit softer, have his hips travel far back, but basically training the muscles in a slow way to get yourself back up to the normal. It's okay to be a little bit detrained after a rehab block. Again, the goal is to get out of pain and to be progressing towards being able to make progress again. After you add in more frequency, you'll bounce back pretty quickly, as long as your programming changes have been smart and you're able to manage pain. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Just want to give you like an example of like what the rehab process might look like, so you guys can apply that in your own practice if you are dealing with it. If you have any questions, just ask down in the comments below.